In this video, we're going to cover text commands, scripts, and add-ins in Fusion 360, and we're going to create our very own. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in this video, we're going to tackle something completely different from a traditional design topic. What I want to talk about today is going to be text commands, scripts, and add-ins in Fusion 360. Now in a previous video, we talked about an add-in to create a Voronoi sketch generator, and it kind of got me thinking. There's a lot of functionality under the surface of Fusion 360 that we can expose, and you don't necessarily need to have a big background in Python coding to be able to use some of it. So what we're going to do today is we're going to get a little bit of an introduction to text commands, and then we're going to create our very first script. And then we're going to hack one of the sample commands in the add-ins and learn how we can use it to our advantage. So to get started, the first thing we want to do is open a brand new design, and we're going to start by creating a sketch. Pick any plane you want, create any sketch you want, but I want to add just a few simple elements. So first, I want to create at least one line or edge that is completely or fully defined. I'm going to create one that's partially defined, and then I'm going to create one that is underdefined. So I'm going to leave this point sort of hanging out in space here, and then I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to create a circle somewhere. It doesn't really matter where. Give it a dimension if you want. Again, we're just going to explore a handful of things. So the first topic that I want to talk about is text commands. And now that we have this sketch, and the sketch currently is in edit mode, so we're currently in this sketch, we're going to go up to our file dropdown to view, and we're going to show text commands. So when we open the text commands, there are three different options we have at the far right. We have TXT, which stands for text, PY for Python, and JS for JavaScript. We're going to focus our attention on the TXT or text commands. Now, the first thing that you'll do when you get a text command is you'll hit the question mark, and this is going to bring up a list of available text commands. I'm going to bring this window up just so we can see it a little bit better. When we do that, you'll notice inside of here that there is another option where it says there are 153 hidden or seldomly used subject areas. And to view these, we can get the double question marks. We're not going to go into that because the one we're really interested for this video is sketch. But you'll also note that we can use the backslash or the slash and question mark to get specific info on a specific command. So to dive deeper into sketch, what we're going to do is we're going to type in sketch and period and then hit enter. When we do this, it's going to bring up the entire list of sketch options that you would have to add on to the end of sketch and period. Now, it's important to note with text commands that there is a lot of these text commands. They're not necessarily hidden because you can obviously view them, but the functionality isn't going to be clearly defined. So you'll notice that there's information about some of them like coincident icons, show coincident icons on point. So when we look through here, if you see something that looks interesting, try to find some more information on it. Don't just go in and try to activate it or enable it if you're not really sure what it does. The two that we're going to focus on in this video are going to be GeomInfo, which shows sketch geometry information, and it says select geometry first. That's going to be important for us. The next thing that we're going to focus on is something called ShowUnderconstrained, which is going to highlight all underconstrained points and curves in the active sketch. And again, the important bit here is that the sketch needs to be active. Both of these things are going to be important going forward, and a lot of these different tools will have these sort of constraints. You can see there's another one in here called Repair Sketch, which can repair small segments and gaps in sketches. Now, unfortunately with this one, there is not a really clear understanding on what it means by small. So how small is small or tiny? And notice here that it has tiny gaps, tiny segments in both. But in this case, I haven't really been able to figure out what the tolerance value is for that. So again, we're not going to be talking about that. We're looking at GeomInfo and ShowUnderconstrained. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go down to my text line and I'm going to type in sketch.ShowUnderconstrained. Now, even though the text in the list has some capitalization, we really don't even need to type that. But before we hit enter, let's make a quick note of our sketch here. Once we hit enter, notice that a handful of things have been highlighted. So this is important because it's highlighting the underconstrained points as well as the entities. So this line here, the circle, and you'll notice that these two lines are not underconstrained. This one's fully constrained, this one's partially constrained, so only its endpoint is highlighted. And also notice that it returned a handful of things for us. We have underconstrained points 3 and underconstrained curves 2. If we were to adjust this sketch and simply snap that point here and rerun this command, so again, Sketch.ShowUnderconstrained, this now tells us that we have 2 underconstrained points and 2 underconstrained curves. So very important info. The next thing that I want to do is take a look at that GeomInfo. So I'm going to select one of my entities because remember, part of it says select geometry first. Then we're going to type in Sketch.GeomInfo and hit enter. So here it tells us that the line start point is 0, 0, 0 and the end point is 0, 5, 0. Now remember, this is 50 millimeters and the dimensions that the system is using in the back end are centimeters. So these are the values that we're going to get back. So this is kind of helpful because in the bottom right hand corner of Fusion we have the length of the line that we have selected. And if we select a profile, we'll get things like area. If we select a circle, we'll get the diameter and we'll get to see that it's a sketch arc. But we can gather a little bit more information, things like the start and the end point of that geometry. So it can be pretty helpful if we understand what this is and where it is. And just real quick, if we go to Sketch.GeomInfo, it's going to give us more information. So you can see here, geometry, circle arc 3D, no start point, no end point, normal 001, radius 1.25. That gives us the info. And again, there are just different ways that we can get through this data. What I want to do at this point is go to my view menu and I'm going to hide my text commands because I don't need to see them anymore. So now we understand that we have 2 text commands, and these 2 text commands are helpful for the fact that we can show underconstrained geometry in our sketch. The sketch has to be currently active, which means that we're editing it. And we can also get additional geometry information, but the geometry has to be selected. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to create a script that allows me to do this without having to type this every time. So from the Utilities menu, we're going to go to our add-ins and we're going to go to Scripts and Add-ins. From here, you'll note that we have a section for My Scripts and Sample Scripts. If you go into the samples, you can select any of these and you can edit them, and it'll open them up in Python or C++. You'll get to see information about how they were created and how you actually interact with them. It's very good for us to go through those examples, but for me, what I want to do is I want to create some new scripts so I can learn how to create these on my own. The way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to select Create. I'm going to select my language, in this case Python, and then I want to give this a new name. You can see that I've got new script 1, 2, and 3. That's just the default. But in this case, I want to go ahead and call this one GeomInfo. If you want to put a description and author information, you can. It's going to automatically put it in the folder where all the other scripts are. And you'll notice that we're creating a script, not an add-in. So let's go ahead and select Create. And now GeomInfo is created. Let's go ahead and edit this and see what happens. For me, what I'm using is going to be the Visual Studio Code, and this is a free program that you can install. If you don't have this installed, I believe that Fusion 360 still ships with a Python editor. It used to be Scratch, I believe. So it kind of just depends on what your system is set up with. If you don't have a code editor, I'm not really sure what will happen at this point, but I do believe Fusion still ships with one, so something should at least open up. You'll notice that inside of here we have a default set of commands that happens, and you can see we have this UI message box and it says hello script. If we just play this, I'm going to drag this off the screen, go to my add-ins, go to my GeomInfo and run. It pops up a little window, it says hello script, and we can click OK. So this is what's happening by default anytime we create a new script. But what we want to do is we want to use that GeomInfo, and we want to display the information that we were getting when we were using our texts. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a little bit of space, and we need to understand what's going on in here. This is not going to be a complete tutorial on Python or how to create a script from scratch. I just want to simply get in and have a little bit of an understanding on how we can use what we have, at least in the text commands, and apply it to creating our own scripts or our own Python code. So first, we'll have to note that at the very top, import Autodesk Core, Autodesk Fusion, CAM, and Traceback. These are coming in by default. And then this def run context, this is where everything is happening. If something is not working, then we'll get this exception down here, and we'll get a message that says it failed, and it'll give us information about what failed. For us, however, we're going to focus on everything that's inside of this try section. Now, the app is going to be a variable that's set to the Autodesk Core application, and it says get. Now, for us, because we're going to have a sketch entity selected already, we're going to be in an active sketch and have something selected. That's really all we need. That's going to grab the information for us. We don't have to do anything else special. So that's kind of a nice perk about already having something selected. It's important to note that if you were programming this to be a little bit more robust, then you would want to have some sort of arguments to handle these exceptions. For example, if you were running this and you didn't have anything selected, you might want to display a text box that says select something. We're not going to go into that. Again, this is not intended to be a complete tutorial on coding in Python or using the API in Fusion. We're just trying to see how we can apply the text commands in here. So if you're following along, right now we have the app, Autodesk Core Applications Get. UI or user interface is set to the app, which is the core application, dot user interface. So now what we have is access to Fusion 360 and access to the user interface. The next bit that we need to do is we need to define a variable that can contain our text command. So we're going to type in a variable. We're going to create one from scratch, and I'm going to call it text command, and you'll notice that I put the C capital, and I'm just going to use the number 1 after it in case we want to add more. We're going to do a space and equals, and then whenever we have a string is a set of characters, just like we see in the UI message box where it says hello script. We're not defining a variable or a container for something. What we're doing is we're defining actual text. So we need to use the quotations, either single or double, and then we're going to type in sketch, so capital S, K-E-T-C-H, period, geom, then capital I-N-F-O, GeomInfo. Exactly the same thing we typed in the text command line. From there, we're going to go to the end of that line and hit enter, which will take us down to the next line. And the next thing that we want to do is we want to figure out the bit of code that will let us actually use that text command. So we're going to create a new variable. This one we're just going to call results. And the reason that we're doing this is because when we're using the Sketch.GeomInfo in the text commands, we were returned something. We got back information about our sketch. So we need to create a value, or we need to create a placeholder that can hold that information that's coming back. So results is going to be equal to our app, which is Fusion 360, dot execute. We're going to start typing execute, and you'll see that execute text commands pops up. I'm going to hit the tab key, which will automatically fill the rest of that in for me. And then the way that this works is we need to put it in brackets. Now, one great thing about using Visual Studio Code here, you can see that everything is colorized on the screen. And also note that we have some pop-ups that it's telling us what is expected to be in here. So inside of these brackets, it's expecting an str or a string. So since we already have that text command 1 that's holding our string, we're going to just simply put that in there. And you'll notice that again, it pops up, so I can hit tab to autofill that. So you can see now we have our text command, sketch.geominfo. We have results equals app dot execute text command. So this is the actual method that we're going to use to tell the software that we want to use a text command. And then we have text command 1. So at this point, what we should have is the text command is initiated, assuming we have something selected, and now we want to display the results. The good news is we already have this UI message box in place. I just need to remove the hello script and the quotes around it and just type in results in here. I don't need to enter this as a string because it's already a container or a variable for the information that's coming back from the software. The last bit I need to do is I need to save this. So I'm going to go to File and Save, or use Control S on the keyboard. I'm going to drag this off the screen. I'm going to select something in my sketch, go to my add-ins, select GeomInfo, and I'm going to run it. Now you can see here we've got geometry is a circle arc 3D, no start point, no end point. That's because circles don't have start and end points. And it says normal 0, 0, 1, radius 1.25. And again, these are in centimeters, and the value that we're getting back is 1.25 centimeters or 12.5 millimeters, which makes sense. Our diameter is 25. So it tells us all the information about what we selected. Let's try it again on another thing, this time a line. Go back to our add-ins, GeomInfo, and run. Here we can see that we have geometry as a line with the start point at 4.99 and some change, 5, 0. The end point is at 0, 0, 0. Because this is underdefined up here and because we're using centimeters as the back end values, you can see here that it's just rounding. We've got a lot of decimal places here. And of course, we could do some additional coding to handle those values, and we could convert them to the units that we see on the screen. But that's a little bit beyond what we want to try to do here. So that was the first stab at getting the Sketch.GeomInfo into our text commands. What I want to do at this point is I'm going to copy what we did here, which is the UI message box results, text command 1, and the results and everything we have here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to scripts and add-ins, and I want to create another script. Again, Python, this new script we're going to use for show under constrained. So go ahead and just call it whatever you want, but I'm going to call it show under constrained and create. Now that we've created it, I'm going to go to edit. It's going to be on the other screen. You might see a trust authors of this folder. Obviously, if you're creating this on your own, you can trust yourself. But then we're going to select the UI message box that's in here, and we're going to paste the code that we already have. Now, instead of GeomInfo, I'm going to change this to show under constrained. So this was one of the reasons why we used text command and why we sort of put that in. We used results because it makes it very easy for us to reuse the data that we already created. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and then we're going to play it. Remember, for this text command to work, we need to make sure that we're in the sketch that we want to use it on. We're editing a sketch, which is currently true. So now we'll go to our scripts and add-ins. We'll go to show under constrained, and we'll run. What we'll see here is that it's highlighted everything that's under constrained, and then it shows us in the message box, because we passed it that result, under constrained points 2, under constrained curves 2. If we come back in and we add some dimensions, let's say 50 millimeters here, now everything is fully defined. So if we go back to our script and we rerun that, you can see here it's got failed because nothing has happened. The argument has no under constrained data, and we didn't really put anything in our code to figure out how to handle that case where there was no data coming back. And again, that's a bit outside of the intent of this video, but just keep in mind that we need to kind of be considerate of the data that we're handling. And if we're getting data back, we need to understand how to handle it. But the next thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about reusing what we did, but figuring out a way that we can put a button on some of our toolbars. Now, the way that this works is actually pretty tricky. You need to have a lot more knowledge of Python. You need to have a lot more knowledge of creating the APIs, but there's sort of a hack that I want to show you. When we go to our add-ins and scripts and add-ins, the add-ins are going to be more like programs that run at the start of Fusion or can run at the start of Fusion. Things like the 100K Garage Electronics Package Generator, Parts for CAD, the Voronoi one that we looked at in a previous video. These are all add-ins, and there's some samples as well, the spur gear, the add-in sample, and command sample. These two here, add-in sample and command sample, are defaults that come with Fusion 360, and they're great places to learn about things that you can do with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at this Python command sample, and I'm going to run it. When I run it, notice that it puts a new section on my utilities toolbar. There's a drop-down with several different things that we can do. Hello world, basic, selections, everything table, browser, and so on. So remember when we created our first script, the first thing that popped up was that sort of hello script or hello world dialog. If we click this, the same thing happens. We already know that we can go in and we can modify that default script that comes in, and we can get it to do what we want. So the way that we're going to sort of hack this up is we're going to go into this sample, or we could copy it, and we're going to use this to our advantage without having to worry about knowing all the different steps to create our own tool on the toolbar and figure out how all that works. Now, obviously, if you want to get proficient with API and you want to continue to develop your own programs, then obviously you need to continue to learn this. But sometimes just getting the job done or the task done is also an important step in the process. So we're going to go to add-ins, scripts and add-ins. We're going to go to our add-in section, the command sample, and select edit. When we select edit, a lot of things come up. And I'll note that the author, Patrick, here, I spoke to him and he kind of helped me better understand how to repurpose the text commands. So I want to give a big thank you to him. He's helped me out for years with all of my different questions. So I really appreciate his knowledge in API and Fusion 360. He's been a huge help to me. So he wrote this, and there's a lot going on inside of here, and it looks quite a bit different than our sample script. When we look at this, nothing is really happening here. So the way that this works is it's actually got a lot of different Python code in different areas inside of the entire package of the add-in. So if I minimize everything, this is probably what it looks like when it opens for you. You've got command sample, which is this first screen, and then it's calling some other utilities throughout the program. You can see that we're sort of starting the program. For our purposes, what we really need to do is we need to find where basic is, and it's under commands. Then you can see basic, browser, everything, hello world, and all these different areas where we can access the functionality that's happening. So under basic, you can see here that some additional stuff pops up. And if we go to entry, there's a lot of code here. And don't get overwhelmed. All we need to do is we need to scroll down and we need to figure out where the message box is that pops up. So you can see here under this, you can see that there's a text box that pops up. It's asking for an expression. So this isn't really the one that we want. And as we scroll back through the Explorer over here, you see Hello World. So Hello World is the one that simply just pops up that text box. So it also has an entry.py. So let's go to that one. And as we go through this, you can see again, there's a lot of code. And if we scroll all the way to the bottom, here you can see that we've got the message is set as Hello World and the UI box is message. So this is exactly where we can come in and we can replace this argument with what we want done. Now remember, we've already come in and we've created our sort of our own program, and I still have it copied, so I'm going to paste it here. We've got text command 1. We've got Sketch.GeomInfo. This is the one that we're going to use. Results, app, execute text command. And then we've got this UI message box results. I'm going to leave everything before it, but of course we could comment this stuff out. If you want to comment this out, you'll notice that this symbol here, which is now commonly referred to as the hashtag, that is going to be what will allow you to comment lines out. So if we want to get rid of this message hello world, we could comment that out by simply doing shift and that symbol number 3 on the keyboard. And also make sure that we get rid of the UI message box because MSG is no longer defined. So I'm going to save this. You'll notice that it turns red up here. And that typically happens when the formatting in your lines is not correct. It likely wants this to be all the way over here. You can see it likely wants that to be all the way over here. Same thing with UI message box. And as soon as those are back in line and the formatting is correct, you can see it's no longer red, but we do still need to save it. So Control and S for me. I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to select something and see if it works. Hello world. You'll notice that it doesn't work. Well, the reason it doesn't work is because we need to stop it and restart it to reinitiate the code. So add-ins, Command Sample, stop, and then restart. Now we have an entity selected, we go to Hello World, and now it's showing us our geometry, line start point and end point. Let's test it again. We'll grab the circle, we'll go to Hello World, and you can see it works there. So this is a little bit of a hack. It's a little bit of a shortcut for us to skip some of the learning process to make this happen. But currently, there is no way to get a shortcut key or to get a tool on the toolbar when you're using scripts. Now, part of that is because the scripts are meant to be run one time and one time only. You have to run them over and over again. The add-ins are typically meant to start with Fusion 360, or they can start with Fusion 360, and always be running or available in the background. So if you want to create a tool like this and you want it to always be available, then you want to make sure that it's created as an add-in. If you want something that you can just run once, then you can create it as a script. We can use ShowUnderconstrained, and again, it's going to fail because we have this fully constrained now, so I'm going to delete one dimension. I'm going to go to my scripts, ShowUnderconstrained, and run. And now it shows me that this circle is under constrained, 0 points, but one under constrained curve. So again, that is a quick way for us to learn about text commands in Fusion 360 and also learn to create a very basic script and a way that we can hack the command sample so that way we can use our script and have a button already available for us on the toolbar. If you want to learn more about Fusion 360 API and Python in general, there are tons of great resources out there. There are courses from Autodesk University that are available on YouTube. I'm not going to link to any of them. I'm still picking through to find the best ones. But Patrick did tell me that there was one from 2020 that should be up there and pretty current. The functionality tends to get added to over time. And what I mean is different functionality gets exposed in the API interface, which means that we can do more and more. And pretty much anything that you can do in the software, you should be able to do with API. There are a lot of great scripts out there, a lot that you can get from the App Store, and we've already taken a look at one. But at this point, if you have any questions on what we've done here, please let me know in the comments or send me an email. Again, I am not a programmer. I do not know Python very well, if at all. But I will do my best to try to help you out if you have any questions or point you in the direction of some good resources. So as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.